This week on the official Marvel podcast, we go behind the scenes of the brand new Marvel television special presentation, The Punisher: One Last Kill. We'll hear all about Frank Castle's latest mission, courtesy of supervising producer Eleena Khamedoost and director Reinaldo Marcus Green.
When you think about Frank Castle and what he's gone through and what his family had to endure, it's hard not to understand how someone could do the things that he has to do to survive in his world. That's the thing that John does so well, is to really tap into that.
We'll also chat with writer Christos Gage and artist Edgar Salazar as they return to Marvel Comics' Civil War era with their brand new series, Civil War Unmasked.
One of the big things that happened in the original series was Spider-Man unmasked before the world as Peter Parker. And that obviously is a huge decision. In our second issue, we'll show how Peter Parker took the time to talk it over with Aunt May and Mary Jane about, should I do this? Should I not do this? What will happen in all likelihood if we do this and go forward with it? How will it affect all of us?
Plus, we do some light wall crawling with writer Dan Slott and artist Marcus Toe and learn all about their new series, Spectacular Spider-Man: Brand New Day.
You want to find new angles, new things. I always want Spider-Man to surprise me. I never want to get into a rut. And also I want to enjoy who I'm working with, where we're making this thing that I couldn't make without you and you couldn't make without me.
And we're going to eat nuts and kick butts as we look at the comic book history of the unbeatable Squirrel-Girl.
I'm Anthony Carboni.
I'm Victoria Ying.
And this is the official Marvel podcast.
Marvel fans, the rumors are true.
We've got interviews. We're going to talk about Squirrel-Girl. There's a big musical number.
Hey, there's not a big musical number.
We're going to have skydivers. There's a confetti cannon.
Okay, we're not going to have any of those things.
Victoria, it's a podcast. They can't see what we do or don't have. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go warm up the marching band.
Okay, I'll tell you what is going to happen. We're going to hear from all of the hosts of the official Marvel podcast as we tour through the House of Ideas.
Let's begin with a behind-the-scenes look at the brand new Marvel television special presentation, The Punisher: One Last Kill. I watched it last night, and wow, my adrenaline was pumping so hard, I'm not sure I've slept yet.
Seriously, not for the kids, but so much action. That Frank Castle is one intense character. That's my hot take.
Let's turn things over to hosts Preeti Chibber, Evan Narciss, and Quinn Lamar to shed some light on the dark world of the Punisher.
Fans were thrilled by the return of their favorite skull-emblazoned vigilante, as Jon Bernthal reprised his role as the Punisher in the all-new Marvel Television special presentation, The Punisher: One Last Kill.
To learn more about how this special came together, we went behind the scenes with some of the creative talent involved, including Marvel Studios supervising producer Eleena Khamedoost. And according to Eleena, one of the big reasons Marvel Studios wanted to tell this story was Jon Bernthal himself.
It felt silly to not continue with Frank's story and to not give him his own sort of forum to be able to spend more time with him and carry that story forward. So, when we were talking about what to do with Frank as a character in the MCU, the idea of doing kind of a standalone that's going to be really a character study and being able to spend time with Frank Castle, who is often misunderstood, incredibly dark, but has this really interesting anti-hero trajectory, seemed really exciting. And then when we heard that Jon is also a writer and that the Punisher could potentially be writing the special about the Punisher, it felt like a no-brainer to pursue that. And that's where we decided to make the special presentation.
According to Eleena, Jon Bernthal has always had a strong sense of who Frank Castle is. He's also very in tune with the audience and the fan base. That insight has become invaluable as he's taken on a more hands-on role as an executive producer.
Seeing him in the production office, working with the department heads, seeing him in budget meetings, seeing him in that environment is something that is honestly has been really great and has been, I'm sure, a fun challenge, but hopefully experience for Jon as well.
Together, Jon Bernthal and the rest of the creative team set out to craft a psychologically nuanced take on the Punisher, one that digs deeper into his character since we last saw him at the end of Marvel Television's Daredevil Born Again Season 1.
So we're meeting Frank several months after we last saw him in the finale of Daredevil Born Again, sort of breaking out of this detention center. And he is in a really dark place mentally. He's sort of at the end of his rope. He doesn't have a strong sense of purpose. He doesn't know what's next. He is seeing hallucinations. He's really a untrustworthy narrator for the audience. You don't know if what he's seeing is real. It's very trippy. And eventually he comes in contact with Manucci, who's this really, really fun villain from the comic book series. And she essentially sets a bounty out on Frank, where he spends the last, act of the entire special in this epic fight sequence.
Manucci made for a compelling match for Frank Castle since they shared a similar history.
When Frank meets Manucci, she's this really kind of unassuming older woman and starts talking about the death of her family members. And what's interesting about Ma is she lost her husband and her sons. And her story is really largely similar to what Frank has experienced, having lost his wife and children as well. And because of this loss and because of the grief that Ma has felt, she almost now becomes a version of the Punisher in her own right, where now she wants to punish those who had anything to do with the death of her family, aka Frank Castle. So it's an interesting story that shows, I think, the effects of loss and grief and that heartbreak in a really cool way. And, Ma was a huge character in the comics. It felt like the right time to introduce a new adversary to Frank, a new fresh character who Frank will be able to come in contact with. And again, the fact that they have a lot in common, I think adds for some rich storytelling.
And while Frank is up against Manucci, he finds himself guided by his memories of Karen Page, played by Deborah Ann Wool. Here's Eleena on Frank and Karen's bond.
I absolutely love Frank Castle and Karen Page. I find that Karen is like the guiding light for Frank in many ways. And so we wanted a character in this special who would in some ways pull Frank out of the darkness and kind of help set him up for what he needs to do next and who he needs to become. And Karen Page seemed like the perfect character for that. And especially coming out of season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, they had a couple really awesome moments in the finale that fans were beyond excited about. And I think the idea of the Frank, Karen, Matt Murdock love triangle is always something that some fans really like to lean into. So Karen in this special ends up becoming a character that he sort of imagines. Is she there? Is she a hallucination? It's the person that he is kind of thinking about and turning to right before this big battle that he's gearing up for. So again, it feels like Karen is always someone who kind of sets Frank up on the right track. She's in some ways like a version of his North Star. After losing his family, he doesn't really have many people that I think he can connect to in that way. And Karen's one of the few characters in his life and in this world that feels like a glimmer of hope, I think, for Frank. And Deborah's amazing. I mean, she's amazing.
While that connection helped anchor Frank and give him a sense of purpose, it's not just the characters that make the Punisher One Last Kill shine. It's also director Reinaldo Marcus Green's creative vision behind the camera.
Ray Green, our director, is amazing. He has done a lot of incredible work, and he has a really great sense of, I think, capturing humanity and that grounded storytelling in a way that's really important when it comes to the Punisher, because the Punisher has always been quite an emotional character and really driven by the hurt and emotions that come with losing your family and that grief. And the fact that this was supposed to be its own contained thing that had like very clear parameters, I think was very attractive to Ray, to be able to kind of make something that felt different from the rest of the MCU. It didn't feel as, big or broad as maybe some other things that you would expect to see from the superhero genre. I think the grittiness and the fact that you're going to really spend a lot of time with this one character was something that drew Ray to this project.
While the grittiness and singular focus of the Marvel Television project was certainly part of what attracted director Reinaldo Marcus Green to the world of the Punisher, his fandom also played a significant part. In fact, he grew up a pretty dedicated Marvel Comics reader. Here's Reinaldo.
My brother and I, we grew up collecting comic books. And that was a big thing in the 80s. And we had everything. We still have it. We have to go to my mom's attic and, kind of go through and, start feeling out what the value of some of these things are, because we would keep it in the comic books with no creases and we'd get the plastic, and my mom would take her little paychecks and really help us get something that she couldn't afford at that time, but she did it for us. And so huge Marvel, collector as a kid, but, it was X-Men for me, and, Iron Man. You have a lot of the X-Men was really like what drove me when I was a kid.
Reinaldo's relationship with Jon Bernthal was also a major factor in joining this project. The two go back a few years, having first worked together on a previous film in 2021.
Well, I was casting this film when Jon Bernthal's name first came across my desk, and to be honest, I didn't know who he was, and of course, when I saw his face, I said, "Oh, that's that guy. I know who he is." But he was actually shooting The Punisher at that time, and so he was playing a character called Rick Macy, who's this very kind of slight tennis coach, puppy dog, kind of voice, chattery. I didn't get it. His team was putting him up for it. And so we ended up meeting at a cafe in Venice. I said, okay, I'll take the meeting. And he comes with a hood on, he's got a pit bull in the front seat. I'm like, who is this guy? He's pretty jacked. And I'm like, but we just hit it off. The next thing you know, we were talking about baseball. He told me he was already training for the role for 3 weeks. Now he doesn't even have the part, but here he is. He's showing me videos of him like hitting the tennis racket. I'm like, this guy's either completely nuts or he's amazing or somewhere in between. I just loved the way he was going after it. And I thought, wow, at the very least, I'm not going to forget him. I thought, wow, the passion is there. The commitment is there. And this is for somebody that doesn't even have the part. And I knew in that moment, I said, this is the guy. And I convinced the studio and I convinced everybody that only sees Jon as the Punisher, or had really only seen him to that point, that this is the guy for the movie. He elevates every scene that he's in. He's incredible in that film. And he's just also an incredible person.
And their partnership didn't stop there. Working together only strengthened their creative connection. In fact, Reinaldo's admiration for Jon's commitment as an actor inspires him as a director.
As a director, to have somebody that's committed to the craft, that's somebody that is not just phoning it in, that is working weekends, up early, up before me. When I woke up this morning, there was a text from Jon, and I know he's already at the gym, so there's no question about his commitment on top of his raw talent. So you've got this combination of somebody that has this sort of rough exterior that is, kind of has this persona, but is also just one of the most human, vulnerable people that I've ever come to know, and so I know the tender, loving Jon Bernthal. I see him as my brother. As he was a catcher in baseball. I was a pitcher, and we have that type of relationship. And I really think about that. If I'm the pitcher and that's the guy who's catching the ball for me every time, he's throwing the ball back every single time, where I don't have to reach for it. I don't have to, he's making sure that I'm getting what I need. And it's become such an amazing relationship, a partnership. It goes beyond just the set. So it's wonderful that you get to work with your friends, but when you know the caliber of actor, and it's not just me, we're talking the top of the top directors in this industry who are like Jon Bernthal. If that guy's on my team, we're going straight to the top. And that's how I feel about him. I really feel that connected to his performances, what he's able to do, his range, the caliber of actor. But I think it really comes down to the human being and just how much of a quality human being he is.
After years of teaming up on character-driven stories, Reinaldo and Jon brought that same energy and approach to The Punisher: One Last Kill. They embraced the entirety of Frank Castle's dark past and crafted a version of The Punisher that dives deeper into Frank's psyche.
Look, Frank is an anti-hero. I grew up, Spike Lee, a Scorsese fan. And so whether it's Goodfellas, I always rooted for those guys. And, that's the mark of a great filmmaker. It's like these guys are doing some pretty heinous things at times, but you understand them. You understand how one could turn into a particular character, and I think it's always about trying to understand the motivation for why somebody's doing that. And so when you think about Frank Castle and what he's gone through and what his family had to endure, it's hard not to understand how someone could do the things that he has to do to survive in his world. And so I think, that's the most important thing for us, is to make sure that those things feel motivated, and not just killing people just to kill. That's not Frank at all. It's the opposite of Frank. Frank is about protecting innocence. And I think that's, as a father, as a husband, as somebody that cares about people, like, I can understand when you're driven to that. There's only so much a human being can take. And that's a very relatable thing for people. I think Frank shows us a side of ourselves that, allows us to feel things that maybe we wouldn't do, but could. And it's in all of us, to be fair. It is in all of us. And I think that's the thing that that I think John does so well, is to really tap into that this could be your father, this could be your uncle, this could be your mother. Anybody that cares about anybody will go to the lengths to protect someone else. And that's why you root for him. That's why you love him. And so long as the action and all of that feels rooted in something that feels real. So it's not just shooting them up and shooting bodies for the purpose of shooting people. It's understanding each kill, understanding that, he's not lingering on this person and enjoying killing someone. He's not Hannibal Lecter. He's somebody that's precise. He's somebody that's protecting people. The kills are clean, they're precise, and I think moving with that precision is important. It's also part of his upbringing and how he came to that character. So I think those are the things that we are trying to make sure that we're dialing in every frame of the film. But yeah, the killing is part of the world that we have, but it's about this human being navigating that situation and his circumstance, and bringing us, the audience, in to feel the journey that he's on. So if we do our job right, I think people will cry, people will laugh, people will enjoy, and it might be dark at times. Sometimes you have to go to that darkness to see the light, and I think that's what Frank Castle represents.
Balancing the special's intense violence with the emotional depth was a top priority for Reinaldo. So he worked closely with the creative team to make sure every action sequence served Frank's story.
Look, I love that I get to do something different and something that people don't know me for. I didn't get into film to make the same movie over and over again. I think, having the ability to do the action that we have, and look, we have an amazing stunt coordinator on this film, and Jude Poyer. I saw his work in Gangs of London. I thought it was terrific. Unbelievable staged action, and how he was able to elevate something and make it feel gritty. It never felt like it didn't belong in that world. All of the kills felt clean. All of the maneuvers felt real. And so I wanted the groundingness of that to kind of translate in this particular film. Look, we're going to elevate. It's a different world. We're creating our own kind of landscape, our own other New York here, which is it's a ton of fun to do that. But we have such an amazing creative team. Robert Elswick, talking about working with crew again. This is my fourth collaboration with Robert, who has also worked with John before. He's one of the greatest living cinematographers. To have him come on and do this special with us, I think, is remarkable. Michael Shaw, our production designer, has done a terrific job in building it, making all the sets feel real, making sure that our locations feel connected and grounded, that we're making this other New York. So I just feel like we have really a tremendous creative team to help guide us and elevate all the action in the film.
The production even brought in military specialists to ensure that every detail felt accurate and true to Frank's character.
Look, I've never worked with as many specialists as we have on this particular project, whether that's ex-Marines, current military, current police officers. We have gun specialists. We have tactical units. We have, the level of specificity when it comes to, to the combat in this film is unparalleled. I've never experienced that before in any particular movie. So this has been amazing. And, what's even better is getting to talk to these guys that have really been in the room, that knows what it's like to lose your best friend, that understands what Frank Castle went through and is going through. A lot of those conversations that we've had have made their way into the script. oftentimes, these stories that you hear are, it's remarkable. And so you pick these off, and it becomes part of the fabric of this film. But, these guys are quick to step up. No, I wouldn't hold the gun that way. You wouldn't shoot him there. Why would you shoot him there? You shoot him here. And I think it's amazing to have them because it just adds that layer of authenticity that you can't get without that level of expertise. And it's not just someone that had studied it in school. It's someone that lived it, that have really been there on the ground, and fought for our country and experience things that most humans will never, ever, ever in their lifetime get to experience. And I think Frank Castle takes all of that in. He understands the demons that he's fighting every day. And he tries not to project that onto people, but to live that, to live a life of honor, of code, despite some of the things that he may have to do to protect himself and others.
As for the future of the Punisher, Reinaldo is just as excited as the fans to catch Frank Castle's next appearance on the big screen.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, so I'm so thrilled that John is joining that team over there. And look, Destin Cretton's an incredible filmmaker, a friend. I no better man for the job. So truly, I'm ecstatic for what they're going to be able to achieve over there. And like you said, that duality and having that, kind of seeing those two different sides of New York and seeing the two different characters and play out in one movie. I think it's an amazing opportunity for fans and the folklore and all of the things that we know, Spider-Man to be in the future. So look, Punisher anywhere is great for the MCU universe. I mean, I could watch that guy in anything. I just feel lucky that we get to have him first, and we get to really build someone that I think people are going to really, really be excited for, and I think Punisher can live on for a good long while. I think that's our hope here. Is to not just bring him back, so to speak. That almost feels like he left. He didn't leave, it's showing him in a way that, I think it's going to live on for a good long time.
You can check out the Marvel Television special presentation, The Punisher: One Last Kill, now streaming on Disney+.
Last week, Marvel Comics released the first issue of Civil War Unmasked, a 5-issue limited series that features all new adventures set before, during, and after the events of the original Civil War.
And luckily, I got a chance to sit down with writer Christos Gage and artist Edgar Salazar to hear what they've got planned for some of the era's biggest players, including Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man, and more. Take a listen. I am so excited to have this conversation. I just read through the first issue, and it is so cool, and I can't wait for our readers to see it. But to start, can you talk us through Civil War Unmasked? What do readers need to know about this miniseries before diving in?
So a working knowledge of the original Civil War event is helpful, but in theory, you shouldn't need to know anything. But basically, the original Civil War event started when essentially a group of teen superheroes fought a group of villains in a populated area in Stamford, Connecticut. And during that battle, like 600 people were killed, including like 60 kids at a school. And as a result, people were outraged, and there was a call for the Superhuman Registration Act, which the government passed, meaning that everyone with superpowers had to register with the government and be supervised by the government. And among the superhuman population, there was a split. Some supported the Superhuman Registration Act, led by Iron Man as the most prominent figure, and then others were against it, led by Captain America as the most prominent figure. This was about 20 years ago that this happened, and that was about when I was starting out as a writer at Marvel, and I got to write a one-shot called Casualties of War, featuring Iron Man and Captain America, and that was sort of my first big book at Marvel. Now, 20 years later, we're doing Civil War Unmasked, which looks at the original event and tells stories of some of the main characters involved that were not revealed the first time around.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's so cool to hear about your original connection to the Civil War story. Edgar, how familiar were you with it before?
Well, back in the day, I read the original series. I love it. Back then, I was still trying to break in the business. So for once, all the superheroes kind of fighting each other was kind of new, to that level. Because yes, we saw before a lot of fighting between, they find one superhero find another in one issue, and hey, they fight and they become friends. So, but this was a total war. There was real sides, and from a reader point of view, you kind of have to choose which one you like better, no?
Yeah. I think Edgar makes a really good point, which is that up until that point in comics, generally when superheroes fought each other, it was usually due to somebody was being mind controlled, or there was a misunderstanding, or, somebody was being blackmailed by a villain, and it didn't last very long. But this was sort of the first time you saw two sides where they were really against each other ideologically. So that was a new thing, and it was exciting.
So how does Civil War Unmasked build on or expand the original story? What new perspectives or insights can readers expect?
So what we try to do with this is take the original story and build on it or expand upon it, and we're not saying, hey, while that was going on, this other thing was going on over here, which has no connection to the main story. It's not that at all. We're saying these things that happen in the main story, maybe there wasn't enough room at the time to fully explore how and why these things happened, but now we do have the time to explore that. So, for example, in our second issue, one of the big things that happened in the original series was Spider-Man unmasked before the world as Peter Parker. And that obviously is a huge decision. In our second issue, we'll show how Peter Parker took the time to talk it over with Aunt May and Mary Jane. Should I do this? Should I not do this? What will happen in all likelihood if we do this and go forward with it? How will it affect all of us? So we see leading up to that, and then we see him unmasked, and then in the immediate aftermath, the Magia, which is a criminal organization in Marvel, hires Hydro Man to attack someone who's close to Peter Parker as revenge. So we sort of see what happens, and we see the consequences, and we get to explore it from a character-focused standpoint as opposed to the original event, which was very large scale, as you would expect from a big event like that.
Yeah, totally. So each issue focuses on different heroes.
Yes.
Which characters are you planning on focusing on, and what led you to choose them for this miniseries?
So the first issue focuses on Iron Man, second issue Spider-Man, third issue Goliath. Hopefully this isn't a spoiler after 20 years, but in the original Civil War, Goliath, Bill Foster, was killed. And since then, his nephew, Tom Foster, took over as Goliath. So in issue 3, that's the only one where we really see past the events of Civil War. So it's more about how Tom comes to the decision to become the new Goliath and how he looks at his relationship with his Uncle Bill. Issue 4 looks at Tigra, who was a mole for Iron Man's team within Captain America's team, and really looks at what led her to that decision to become a mole and how it affected her. And then issue 5 looks at Captain America. It's sort of a bookend to the Iron Man issue. And how did we arrive at those decisions? It was a matter of looking at the original event, and there were some characters that were obvious ones to choose, like Iron Man, Captain America, Spider-Man was fairly easy. But then there were some where, while reading the original event, I was like, wait a minute, I don't think we've ever looked at why is she spying for one set of friends on behalf of another set of friends. So it was just all about where the best stories could come from.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. All right, Edgar, the original Civil War was illustrated by Steve McNiven. In what ways has his work inspired you, and how are you blending that inspiration with your own artistic style?
Well, when I read the series originally, that was one of my favorite ones. And Steve McNiven, well, he's one of the best artists in the business, And I took a lot of inspiration and learning from his work, all his cinematic style of storytelling. I studied a lot of it back in the day. So when I started with this series, there are some scenes that we already saw at the original series, a few pages. And when I get to those pages, I try to connect, not only draw the same scene, but try to get a similar style of storytelling, because I'm trying to connect the original series with our own.
Wow, that's really cool. It sounds like a really big challenge. So joining you on art is Maury Hollowell, the original Civil War colorist. What's it like seeing your artwork brought to life with that familiar color palette?
Well, it's amazing. He's an amazing artist, a great colorist. And seeing my artwork with his color palette, well, for one, he makes it a lot better. In the other part is that it helps with the connection that was mentioned before, because it doesn't take you out of the original story. I think it helps us to make the whole series like a whole. So it's been great to work with Maury.
What do you hope readers take away from this miniseries? And what about fans of the original?
Oh, gosh. Well, I hope that fans of the original find that it helps deepen and expand their appreciation of the original. When I did the one-shot 20 years ago, the Casualties of War one-shot, what I was asked to do by the editors at the time was to look at the past of Iron Man and Captain America and use it to try to explain how these two guys who had been friends and not allies for so long could get to this point where they're fighting each other instead of working things out. And I did that. And I had a lot of fans over the past 20 years come to me and say, hey, that really helped me believe and understand the whole event and make it work for me. And that made me feel good because, it sort of made the event work for them and made the story feel believable. So I hope that this does more of that and helps them say, oh, hey, this really expanded my appreciation of why Peter Parker would make this decision and why Tigra would decide to be a spy. And, obviously at the end of the day, the reason we do this is to entertain people. So I hope people are entertained and enjoy themselves. But, makes them think a little bit about difficult moral situations and, what would I do in that situation? A lot of good entertainment is thought-provoking.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This was so much fun. Reading the first issue is amazing and can't wait to read the rest of it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
My spidey senses are tingling and telling me that our fellow host, Langston Belton, has something exciting to share.
I am not sure that that's how Spidey Sense works, but yes, it's true. Langston got the chance to speak with writer Dan Slott and artist Marcus Toe about their new series, Spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day. Take a listen.
Okay, I'm joined by writer Dan Slott and artist Marcus Toe. Thank you so much for chatting with us. To start, can you please introduce yourselves and tell us what you do here at Marvel?
I am Dan Slott, and I am currently writing Spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day for Marvel.
And my name is Marcus Toe, and I'm the penciler inker for Spider-Man Brand New Day.
Nice. So, Marcus, we know Dan's history with the Wall Crawler, but Marcus, can you tell us about your Spider-Man fan? What was your origin story and familiarity with this character?
Well, like lots of people my age, a lot of us kind of, our entryway to Spider-Man was the cartoons. So, and this includes the old cartoons. My mom even watched that stuff. And I think a lot of us 90s kids, we got into it from the cartoon, and that really kind of sparked a love for the character and really sparked the interest in the comics as well.
So, Dan, we were just talking before we got started about the original Brand New Day storyline beginning way back in 2008 and it concluded in 2010. So can you tell us where that previous storyline left off? Where do readers need to begin to kind of get a primer on the story? That all-important question of how do I get started with Brand New Day?
This is the magic of Spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day #1. No homework is required. You can just jump in along with Marcus doing like the heavy lifting, and we have 20-page issues, and Marcus is drawing 19 of each. And our first issue is a 25-pager, a giant oversize, and Marcus is drawing 22 pages of that. So everything you need to know, it's all in one issue. And as we introduce new things and concepts throughout our stories, you'll get these one page of here's Mr. Negative, and here's how his powers work. Like all those great old annual backups where they'd have that page of how does Spider-Man's web shooters work? We're going to have infographics like that in our comics.
So, Marcus, I do want to ask, like, when you're taking on this character that, I mean, to say that Spider-Man is beloved might be understatement of the century. So what were you excited to bring to this story in terms of your expression of how you are illustrating the wall crawler?
I look at it like I'm in the big leagues finally after a lot of years in the minors. So everyone knows Spider-Man, and he's been one of my favorite characters forever, and I love the action and the fun you can do with all his posing and his webs. You know, I grew up drawing him, so it felt like second nature, really.
Let's get into Spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day. So, of course, you don't want to spoil anything, but what can you tell us about the basic premise of the story? How much in-universe time has passed since that original story? New characters, themes. Tell us what you can about this amazing story that we're looking forward to.
We're doing a 5-issue arc, and the 4 issues are set during Brand New Day time. And by issue 5, we pop into the future. Well, the present. There is a really big MacGuffin in this story called the Lexicon of Crime. It is this ledger written in blood with possible magical supernatural powers, which has all of the secrets of all the crime families of New York and all the kind of contracts they've gotten into with each other, where who controls what area, who does not go into here. But if you have this, it's meant to be held by the kingpin of crime. And it's meant to be this thing that not brokers a peace, but keeps you all from killing each other. And it's now in the hands of Spider-Man. So it's like, what if you're a crime fighter and someone gave you the textbook that's the teacher's edition? You don't have to be the greatest detective of all time. You just can be Spider-Man, and you're going to go to town on crime. We're used to Spidey being the underdog, but now, boy, does he have a power-up. It's fun. We have Brand New Day supporting cast. So you get Robbie Robertson and Dexter Bennett, who's running the Daily Bugle. We have the Feast Center, which is run by Martin Lee, the greatest philanthropist in New York City, who's secretly Mr. Negative. But that's where Aunt May works, and other characters you may know. So there's all these things that if you're a new fan, you'll go, oh, I know these guys.
Right. You get this wonderful cast to play with. Was there anyone, of course, besides Spider-Man, who were you really excited that you saw on that list of like, ooh, who made you the most excited that you were going to get to draw?
I really love the scenes that I get to draw Robbie Robertson with Peter. And those two characters interacting is always a lot of fun. I love drawing stuff like that. I also get to draw the Punisher, which is super fun.
So when all these characters come together, Dan, what is it like when you're trying to balance each of these characters and giving them their moment to have their spot but still balancing, like you got to still tell this forward narrative. And as much as I know you want to just maybe write a scene of Spider-Man and Frank acting up in New York City, we got to get to the fireworks factory, as they say.
It is such a strange character to have Spider-Man working with at the start of the story, because if you're Spider-Man, you don't put up with certain kinds of things. You'll see how fate has drawn them together. This is someone that Spider-Man would rather not be teaming up with. If you're Spider-Man, you try to save everybody, and that includes the crooks. And there's a bit where in the first issue, Spider-Man has to explain these recurring villains of his to Punisher, and Punisher's like, that's the difference between us. I never have to fight the same guy twice.
So what is it like collaborating? So what has that process been like? What was surprising? What did you find easier than you might have thought? What were maybe some of the challenges you both faced in trying to bring the story to life?
One of the things I'm loving is how cinematic Marcus can make everything, and where he places cameras and how he tells the story. It excites me to get to the next thing. I think you start learning each other's language the more you work together.
I've been telling everybody I know right now how much I enjoy Dan's scripts because they're very loose. I kind of let my imagination go with how Dan writes as opposed to a laundry list of things I need to do in a panel. So, and I really find it quite helpful, you know, when I pass out layouts to Dan and he comes back at me just like giving me notes, not to change anything per se, but just to like, okay, remember this because the feeling of the story is this, or the panel we want to showcase that. It allows for a lot more freedom for what I need to do. It's made the layouts a lot easier to kind of figure out in my mind because I can allow my natural kind of storytelling abilities to play. in the sandbox, as opposed to just going with whatever is told to me.
Well, Dan, I want to ask you, because you've been writing comics in so many ways, so many different characters. How have you evolved since, like, again, we're talking about there was an original Brand New Day and now we have another Brand New Day. Where is this current Dan Slott we're talking to right now at writing wise in regards to that previous Dan Slott? How has your style evolved and changed?
You want to find new angles, new things. I always want Spider-Man to surprise me. I never want to get into a rut. And also I want to enjoy who I'm working with, where we're making this thing that I couldn't make without you and you couldn't make without me. And also, I think I'm better at going where the river goes, where suddenly, like I would have these great plans that I would lay out for hundreds of issues. And then oh my God, and Doc Ock swapped his brain in? What? And you could go back and look at all the puzzle pieces that got you there. Nowadays, I'm more like, what is the story telling me and where is it taking me as we go down the river? So I know where the stories are going in general, but I think I'm more nimble now to go, what's the interesting thing that just popped up that we've never seen in a Spider-Man book before?
So, I mean, there's so much to look forward to. So, Dan, what are you looking forward to readers seeing from Marcus? And Marcus, what are you looking forward to readers getting from Dan in this book?
Everything I've read of Marcus it's all these big team books. And now he gets to go granular on one character. And I know Marcus has drawn him in Battle World, but making Spidey the lead and going forward and just, there's something cool about that.
This is a tough one because all I can think of is really, it's more Dan Slott. What you can't ask for more. He's so prolific and it's great, And I'm a firm believer, actually, is that the most successful comics are the ones that where the creative team stays for long periods of time, and I want to have that with Dan if we ever can do it with more Spider-Man stuff, for sure.
I would love that.
There you go. A bond has been formed.
My dream is to have like 30, 50 issues all with one creative team. As a fan, as a creator myself, that's what I like the most.
I am loving writing this grounded, street level Spider-Man that I grew up with. I'm loving him mixing it up with Kingpin and Punisher and Mr. Negative, and it's all very street level, and that's a joy.
Dan, Marcus, it was so great speaking with you today. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Langston.
Thanks.
Over the course of this podcast, we've taken a lot of deep dive character studies of the heroes and villains of the Marvel Universe. But up to now, there's been one character that has been grossly overlooked. And today, we correct that oversight.
What unbeatable, bushy-tailed, acorn-adoring hero could we be talking about? For that answer, let's hand things over to fellow hosts Sade Spence and Ray Lowe.
Ray, if you were to make a list of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe, who would you put on it?
Ooh, let's see. Thor, probably.
Right.
Captain Marvel, the Hulk.
Of course.
Squirrel-Girl, Storm, Silver Surfer.
Whoa, hold on. Back up for a second. Did you say Squirrel-Girl, whose name accurately describes both her appearance and her powers?
As being very squirrel-like, yeah.
Whew! I was afraid you and I might not have been on the same page about this. But yes, Squirrel-Girl absolutely deserves a place on that list.
Yes. Okay, so she might not sound or I guess look very intimidating, but when it comes to taking down the bad guys, no one can deny Squirrel-Girl's record.
Absolutely. Seriously, is there a top-tier supervillain she hasn't taken down? In the words of SG herself, she is here to kick butts and eat nuts.
Doreen Green's story starts in suburban California when, as a young child, she develops a serious set of buck teeth and a long, fluffy tail. Predictably, such physical differences make her an instant bully target, so she runs away to the forest to seek refuge from the constant mockery she gets at school. Now, it's there in the woods that she realizes she can communicate with squirrels. One bushy-tailed fellow named Monkey Joe really bonds with Doreen and becomes her best friend. While hanging out with Monkey Joe and his pals, Doreen discovers that she has a vast range of squirrely abilities, like enhanced agility, balance, climbing, jumping, all the squirrely things, and yes, chewing. But what is she going to do with these newfound powers?
Well, she's always been a big fan of Iron Man. So she makes herself a costume, officially names herself Squirrel-Girl, confronts Iron Man, and tells him she's going to be his partner.
She apparently also has enhanced confidence.
Iron Man's basically like, yeah, that's cute, kid, and brushes her off. He's a little more impressed when, just moments later, he's attacked by big-time baddie Dr. Doom, and only survives because he is saved by Squirrel-Girl, who then defeats Dr. Doom because in all his years of villaining, Dr. Doom never anticipated being overrun by a horde of squirrels that gnaw at the joints of his armor, disabling him and forcing him to flee in a panic. So yeah, that's right. Squirrel-Girl has been a hero for less than a day, and she's already rescued Iron Man and beaten Dr. Doom.
I mean, that's quite a debut, even though I guess jerky Tony Stark still doesn't want a partner. But that's okay, because Doreen soon gets an invitation to join the Great Lakes Avengers.
Now, before you get too excited, please be aware that the Great Lakes Avengers are not affiliated in any way with the real Avengers. In fact, the real Avengers have had to sue them several times to get them to stop using the name.
The Great Lakes Avengers are a team based out of Milwaukee, consisting of heroes like Flatman, who is basically two-dimensional,
Big Bertha, who has the power to gain weight at will,
and Mr. Immortal, who can't die, which is lucky for him because he's not really skilled in any other way. But hey, these guys, they really want Squirrel-Girl on their team, and she accepts, but only on the condition that they also take on Monkey Joe as a member. She is a ride or die.
Unfortunately, joining the GLA turns out to be the worst decision of Monkey Joe's life, as he tragically dies on his first mission. Doreen grieves, of course, but soon finds a new worthy squirrel sidekick, Tippy Toe.
Apparently, there are just many little animal sidekicks out there in the forest. That's where I need to head next. With Squirrel-Girl and Tippy Toe among their numbers, the Great Lakes Avengers score some of their biggest wins ever, including the neutralization of a few cosmic-level threats.
Though, in reality, it's Squirrel-Girl who does most of the winning. And after she manages to defeat Fin Fang Foom,
who is a giant freaking dragon, by the way.
Yes. After Squirrel-Girl defeats Fin Fang Foom by herself, she comes to a realization. To continue being a Great Lakes Avenger would be unfair to her teammates. If she can defeat all the bad guys on her own, and the others don't even get a chance to fight, how will they ever improve as heroes? So, out of the goodness of her heart, Squirrel-Girl quits the GLA.
She heads to New York where, in addition to studying at Empire State University, she continues her ridiculously long win streak over supervillains of literally every type and caliber.
Oh yeah. Violent, weapon-toting foes like Deadpool, the Punisher, and Kraven the Hunter.
Or mystical bad guys like Baron Mordo and the Mandarin.
Omega-level mutants like Magneto.
Deadly demons like Mephisto.
Oh, and time travelers like Kang the Conqueror.
I'm going to one-up you because she also gets the better of big bads like, get this, Ultron and Thanos, for crying out loud. Squirrel-Girl even manages all by herself to save Earth from world devourer Galactus.
I know. So how does she do it? You might be asking yourself. How does this girl with squirrel powers take down so many powerful villains? The element of surprise might be a part of it. Squirrel-Girl's methods are just so unpredictable and so odd that the bad guys are simply flummoxed by her. How do you know what to swing at when you've got someone's big bushy tail in your eyes?
Yeah, I guess, or how to use your death ray when someone's gnawed through the wiring.
How could any villain prepare themselves for a move like the Furball Special, which basically consists of having a screaming, scratching squirrel hurled at your face?
But, you know, I think the thing the bad guys are most unprepared for is just how darn likable Doreen is. I mean, more than a few of Squirrel-Girl's wins can be attributed to her congenial personality and the fact that she's willing to just talk things out if her opponent is open to it. I mean, that's basically how she won over Galactus, by chatting with him until they were pretty much buddies and then saying, hey, you know what would really sate that cosmic hunger of yours? Nuts. Let's go and find you a planet that has way more nuts than Earth.
Knowing all of this, is it any wonder that when Dr. Doom stole the power of the Sorcerer Supreme recently and declared himself Emperor of the world, The elite team of heroes that convened to brainstorm a plan to save the planet consisted of Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, the Fantastic Four, and Squirrel-Girl.
Squirrel-Girl, Earth's mightiest hero.
In 2007's Amazing Spider-Man number 537, Spidey finds himself as an enemy of both the public and the government after he takes a stand against the Superhuman Registration Act. So he reaches out to Captain America, hoping to join the anti-registration underground. With the public now turning on him, he asks Captain America a question. How do you keep going when it feels like the whole country is against you? After all, by this point, the public has labeled Cap as a traitor for refusing to support registration. Cap turns to Spider-Man and answers with one of the most enduring and memorable moments from the entire Civil War saga. Doesn't matter what the press says. Doesn't matter what the politicians or the mobs say. Doesn't matter if the whole country decides that something wrong is something right. This nation was founded on one principle above all else: the requirement that we stand up for what we believe, no matter the odds or the consequences. When the mob and the press and the whole world tell you to move, your job is to plant yourself like a tree beside the river of truth and tell the whole world, no, you move. The official Marvel podcast was hosted by me, Anthony Carboni.
And me, Victoria Ying.
And also me, Langston Belton.
And me, Preeti Chibber.
And me, Evan Narcissus.
And me, Ray Lowe.
And me, Quinn Lamar.
And me, Sade Spence.
Our producers are Jasmine Estrada and Anita Flores. Additional editing by Rye Dorsey and Justin Harris. Additional writing by Christopher Healy.
Brad Barton is our senior manager of audio production and development, and our production manager is Emily Godfrey.
Mixed by Rye Dorsey.
Our theme music is by Ida Akbal.
Executive produced by Larissa Rosen.
Thanks for listening.